One of the common objections I hear to the win-win concept is this. At least in the liberty struggle context, this is the kind of reaction I get. The win-win solution is for the government to do what we say it should and compromise with us. Well, yeah, that would be nice. The results would be ideal. But that's not how compromise or win-win works. I mean, you have to think outside the box. At least a little bit outside the box. Now, I'm being a little unfair to the people I've interviewed who've said things like that. And that, I think, because a lot of times I ask them for a win-win solution without giving them a lot of time to think of one. Well, I don't have that excuse. I've had some time to think of scenarios, and I want to present one to you now, an illustrated possible future scenario. This is how liberty activists and citizens in Keene could come to a win-win accommodation with the government of Keene. The primary conflict going on right now in Keene centers around Central Square.
Boo! You're under arrest for smoking a joint in front of him. Let him go! You are go!
Liberty activists and average citizens have been using that location to exercise new freedoms over the last couple years. There's a lot of marijuana smoking that goes on there. Soapboxing, an event called Free Speech Fridays. But this has created grievances on the part of the city, government, some authoritarians in the town, some normal residents, and some businesses. They don't like having the square, well, in use. Of course, there is a legitimate grievance held inside the illegitimate grievance, and that is...
Don't put your hand on me.
Why are you taking pictures of me? Why are you taking pictures of me?
Don't put your hands on me.
I'm sorry,
That, of course, there are some people who go to the square that you wouldn't want to be around. That's what happens when there are people in a public space. When people use a public space. Some of them you won't like. Some of the things they do, none of us would like. That's the legitimate grievance that has to be met by liberty folk in order to defang and address the concerns of authoritarians. The city government right now is possibly moving forward on a plan to impose a curfew on this Central Square, which is not a park. They may turn it into a park and then curfew it, which means you wouldn't even be able to walk across it. It's basically a pedestrian thoroughfare. You wouldn't be able to walk across it to get from one point to another. Everyone would be going out of their way every late night that they're walking around in that area, probably. It's a cruel and stupid solution that would be imposed against people who have not done anything to the city government. It would slap even pro-government Keene residents across the face. So here's my suggested scenario for heading that crisis off and making the government people happy. I want them to be happy. I just don't want them to be hurting anybody. So, in my scenario, a reasonable person who doesn't live in Keene, but does have, does speak with some voice in the liberty community, approaches some relatively likable Keene official. Maybe Chuck Redfern, maybe Cynthia Georgiana, maybe one of the other city councilors. There are others who I like better, whose names I've forgotten. Maybe John McLean, the city manager. I hope I'm saying that correctly. He's fairly approachable some of the time.
Mr. McLean, how are you? What is your salary, if I might ask?
Stop it. It's a matter of record. It's published in the newspaper.
Why did you touch me, if I might ask?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were in my face.
And he's close to being a decision maker on this. Promise something to the city that the city will like. A weekly litter pickup that covers a 1-block radius or a 2-block radius all the way around Central Square. That pickup must occur every week for a 6-month period, say April 1st through October 1st, 2012. If more than 1 week during that period is missed, maybe we should say if more than 3 weeks during that period are missed, then the deal is off and the city goes ahead and moves forward with its park curfew. But you just pledge to make those cleanups in exchange for the city holding off seeing how it works. You know, litter pickup is something we do anyway. We don't do it there on such a large scale. You're not helping the city hurt anybody by doing the litter pickup, but at the same time, you are kind of making them a little happier, the city government people and the authoritarians. Businesses should love it. That's my suggested solution, and I'm not just talking. I did drive all the way out there and clean that radius myself a month or two ago. We didn't clean the entire radius, but I went about, half a mile south all the way up to Central Square and cleaned almost everything in my line of sight. Well, that's something probably you need to do and institutionalize it if you're a Keene area activist. That's the way to resolve this problem, at least based on my view, which may be a little bit dated. I haven't been there in a few weeks, like I said. So maybe you've got something going that's better that you think will address this issue. But that's just one example off the top of my head of how a win-win solution could be brokered pretty easily, between these implacable foes, the Free Keeners and the authoritarian city of Keene. Think how much easier it would be for, the much less controversial activists in Manchester or Grafton to come to an accommodation that benefits everyone. And I think, win-win scenarios like this, if they play out, they should be like dominoes. You have a small agreement, a small moving forward with an authoritarian institution, and things start to change and spin in that direction. They snowball. There's more and more agreements, more and more bonds formed. Ultimately, I hope, more and more freedom. Think about it. Reach out. See what you can do.